Hey there folks, John here from Biddy Kong's Quest, and with today being Father's Day, I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about how I got started in video games in the first place, and that's largely thanks to my dad. Now, I've talked about this a little bit on the channel before, but my dad was a college football coach, so we would often, after school, have to go to work with him because my mom worked as well, and I would have nothing to do. If you don't know what a college football coach's office is like, basically there's a whiteboard and a bunch of gameplay tapes of games that they had played, and he's just sitting there, he's analyzing footage, he's having meetings with his other coaches, he's writing stuff on the whiteboard that I probably don't care about as a 4-year-old, all these other things. It's an extremely boring place to be for a kid. So one of my constant companions there was comics. We would always rent a movie. This was before I had an NES, and so there was no video game of mine that was there. This is actually where I first saw Little Nemo, the movie. Those of you that know me know my love for that franchise and that character and that game and everything else. Well, it started, in that office with that movie. One of the strongest memories, though, is of his original Atari. Now, again, I didn't have an NES at this point. This would have been the first time that I was ever really introduced to the concept of a video game. And most of the time, people think of the Atari 2600 when they think of the old classic Atari. And for me, that wasn't really the case, because we actually had an old Atari 2600. This is what the original box looks like. This is what's known as a Heavy Sixer, which is the first model of the Atari that they made. They made several different ones. This one has 6 switches and it's heavy. That's why it's called a Heavy Sixer. But this is what that looks like. That actually wasn't the Atari in my dad's office, though. That one was the Atari 5200, and you can see I'm struggling with these boxes because they are massive. But this is the box, and I'm just going to put it right here in front of my face because it's easier, for the Atari 5200, which is the one that he had in his office. And again, a lot of people think of the 2600 as being like the Atari. For me, that wasn't the case. It was actually the 5200 that I got started with. And I think everybody forgets about that one because they had the 2600 and then the 5200, and then shortly after that, they came up with the 7800, which was better and could play 7600 games. Atari 5200, those games are locked to that console, so they're, you can't really play them on anything else. But again, that was my Atari. That was my one that I was introduced to. So I wanted to go through just kind of what that looks like. So this is an Atari 5200, and as you can see, it's a pretty big boy. Like it's not light. I have an NES here for size comparison. So this is an NES. You guys are probably all familiar with this. This is the size of an Atari 5200 compared to an NES. Now, you may be wondering, why is this thing so stinking big? It is an old console after all. Well, I think there's a couple reasons for that, but, they also included cable storage, because, like, the NES and the other ones, they have removable cables. This didn't. This has a built-in RF cable, if I can get it, built-in RF cable, and RF is basically the one that you would put into your old cable connection, and you actually had to have a little game converter here to actually get it to plug in if you didn't have a TV that it could go in directly. So really interesting old tech here. I actually did record some gameplay for some of the games I'm going to talk about. But I had to use an emulator because I don't have an adapter to get this into my RetroTink 4K right now, sadly. I do have the adapter, but I don't know, when we moved a couple of years ago, it got lost somewhere. But back to the console itself. So this is the Atari 5200. The other reason that it is so stinking big is because it actually has controller storage built in, which I think is really cool. And a lot of old game systems actually had this kind of feature. If I can get it to stay open while I actually show you guys. And there you go. So you can see it has this cavity in it, and this is actually for controller storage. Now, obviously, I can't hold it up and put controllers in it. I'll show you the controllers in just a second. A lot of older systems had a storage system like this, kind of built in, which I think is pretty cool. And then, obviously, there's a power button right there. And in the back, that's where you plug in the power. And that's kind of it. I mean, it's a very simple system. It's very sleek looking. Now, I did just notice this still has the plastic protector on it for the steel, which is why it may not look quite as shiny as you might think. And I can actually see, I could peel this off right now. Obviously, I am not doing that. This is a family heirloom. This is old. That plastic has been on there for, when did this come out? In the early 80s, so the better part of 4 decades. I'm not about to remove it now. But that said, it is pretty cool. that still is on there. But yeah, that's the Atari 5200. That's what it looks like. I mean, I'll stop talking about it. It's a big black box. It's not that interesting. But that's the 5200 itself. You know, it's not that interesting. It's just a big black box. But it is interesting to see how these things are designed, you know, with the cable management and with the controller storage and all the other stuff. Some of the things that aren't really considered or really needed today were needed then with these consoles. So we're going to look at some of the accessories and stuff like that. And the controller for the 5200 is actually really interesting because if everybody's probably familiar with an old Atari 2600 controller. It's just the one stick and the one button. The Atari 5200 is way different. It's actually this guy, and I'll do some close-up shots of it so you can kind of see, but it has a keypad on it. This keypad actually has little hooks in it so you can put an overlay in it, because there would be different overlays that would come with different games if they use the keypad that kind of give you instructions for what the different buttons did. You have a joystick here. This one's still in pretty good shape, although I do remember these things not being super responsive. And then you actually had two different buttons here and two different buttons here, and that is a lot of buttons considering that the original one only had one. And then you also had a start, a pause, and a reset button up here. So there's quite a bit going on with this controller. And again, this one still has the plastic over the steel. I'm not removing that. I think they were really trying to be ambitious with this Atari 5200 and trying to really push the envelope in the types of games that they were actually offering. Now, I do believe there's a paddle controller for this as well. I don't have it. I only have the two original controllers that came with the box. But it is pretty cool. There's also a trackball controller, which I've never even seen. I don't even know how much that thing would be. But anyway, so these are the controllers. The controllers are really interesting, and it's a huge step up from the Atari 2600, which I found pretty cool. Now let's talk about the games. Obviously, there was a Pac-Man title back in the day. You know, they actually had Pac-Man titles for games, unlike the Switch 2, which did not, and you had to pay $10 for the Pac-Man, but whatever. But the Pac-Man title for this one was probably the most popular game at the time, and that is Pac-Man. Now you can see this is, it says sold with Atari 5200, not for resale. So this is not for resale cart. So this is what actually came in that box that I showed you earlier. And this was my introduction to Pac-Man, not the arcade, and not the crappy 2600 version. So if you've played Pac-Man on the 2600, it's horrible. It's terrible. It's like so bad. This is actually a pretty good facsimile of the arcade version. Which is pretty cool because it was something that they really failed on the first time they tried to make it. And I'm really happy that it is that good because this was my first experience with Pac-Man, and this is where I really started enjoying and loving Pac-Man. There's no frills. It's not really any different from any other port of Pac-Man that you've seen. If you know Pac-Man, this is Pac-Man. But that's the beauty of it, that this is Pac-Man. There was a lot of bad ports of Pac-Man back then, and this is the one that I played. So I would play this one for hours at my dad's office because, again, nothing else to do. Now you can see the Atari 2600 carts are actually pretty big. They're probably about 2/3 of the size, so an NES cartridge would kind of come up here, but they're much bigger than an Atari 2600 cart. I talked about the overlay that goes in the controller. Now this overlay again was never used because it's Pac-Man. We didn't have to use it, but it came with an overlay in the back of the cartridge here. And again, there's this really interesting trend we're seeing here where Atari was very smart about where they stored stuff. So like your overlays for each game would be stored with the game cartridge itself, which I think is super cool. And then you would basically just take your overlay and you would put it on your controller just like that. And now I've got my overlay over Pac-Man. So now I don't see the numbered buttons anymore. All I see is the buttons that are actually applying to Pac-Man itself, which I think is just super cool. And then when you push it, you know, it's pushing the buttons down there, which is pretty awesome. So that's what would happen. That's how you would deal with your overlays. And this isn't paper. This is actually like a plastic, kind of like a vinyl type of overlay. But I think it's super cool, and I love that design decision. Now we're gonna take a look over at the bench at the manual a little bit closer, but I do like that on the Atari, manuals are full color. So you can see there's a little bit of color right there, the original Pac-Man. And then here's the intro, but it's pretty cool. They put a lot of effort into this. I think that they really cared about this system and they really wanted it to be successful. And honestly, it is way better than the 2600. I know some people are nostalgic for the 2600. I am not really. You know, the Atari 50 collection is really cool, and I love that from a documentary perspective and from a historian perspective. But I mean, I'm not nostalgic for the 2600. I am nostalgic for the 5200. And again, it's because of my dad. It's not really because of the system itself. It's because this was the special thing that I got to do with him at his office. Now, the other game that we played is called Pole Position, and if you've never seen Pole Position, this is it right here. Now, I think it is interesting. I don't know if this is a fluke or if this is just what happened over the course of whenever my dad had this. The overlay for Pole Position is actually Pac-Man. Now, I don't know if for Pole Position they didn't have an overlay, and so they were just like, well, just throw Pac-Man on there. It's fine. Which could be the case because Pole Position does not require a whole lot of intricacy. It's a racing game. It's one of the ones, kind of like Outrun or something, where basically you just have to drive and you have to complete laps before the time runs out, and if the time runs out, it's game over. It's actually a pretty hard game. I would play this one because I liked racing stuff, and I thought it was a really cool game with the you know, kind of pseudo 3D-ness of it and stuff like that. And then I would get frustrated and I would stop playing probably 5 minutes in because it's actually a pretty tough game. Like even the qualifying race, you've got to drive like super well. One thing I did think was really cool though was the sound design in this game. You know, obviously you've got the engine noises, but there's this really cool thing where when you pass another car, it actually does like the passing sound. You know, as like a 4-year-old, I thought that was super cool because when you passed the car, it actually sounded like you passed the car. It was pretty sick. Now, if you look at it today, it's pretty rudimentary, and you can probably see that from what I just showed you. But, you know, at the time, it was really stinking cool. And so that's Pole Position. Again, I have pretty fond memories of this game, even though it was really hard, because I would continue to keep putting it in, thinking, oh, I could do better. The controls are definitely a little bit fiddly. It's really hard to get your car to just go straight. Like, you're always going at least, like, just a little bit left or a little bit right. But again, you know, Mario Kart World just came out. We wouldn't have Mario Kart World if it wasn't for stuff like this. Now, I wish I had the box for this one. I don't. This is one of those things where I don't know what the history of this thing was before I inherited it. And I'm sure that, you know, knowing my dad, he probably just threw the box away. Or knowing my mom, she probably threw the box away, to be honest. That's the truth of that. But, you know, it's okay. I still have this, and I've actually started collecting other Atari 5200 games since, you know, kind of getting back into it and kind of revitalizing all of this. Now, unfortunately, those games are still packed away, and I actually can't lift the boxes right now with my back issues. You can go look at my video about how I got hurt. So, you know, those will stay tucked away, maybe for a sequel video. But I have actually started collecting Atari 5200 games, you know, as a result, because this is one of those things that I want to have because it's close to me because of my father. You know, again, this is back to Father's Day. This is a Father's Day video. The whole reason that I'm getting into this Atari 5200 is because this was my introduction to video games, and it's all because of my dad. Now, I know, you know, that can be a touchy or a sad subject for some people. You know, my dad passed away a couple of years ago, and so I've spent the last couple of years, you know, cataloging all of the things that he had and the things that he did and all these other things. And for me, you know, this is an important part of it. For somebody else, you know, I mean, this is like a little footnote, right, in somebody's life. But it's interesting to think about how the people that, you know, influence you, they kind of start you on things without really understanding what they're doing, just because they want to, you know, keep their kid entertained at work or whatever. You know, I am doing what I'm doing right now, like literally talking to you guys. I probably wouldn't be doing it if I hadn't been introduced to video games in the first place by my dad. So do you have any good memories of your dad or of Father's Day, or maybe even just how you got into gaming? Leave a comment down below. I'd love to chat with you guys about it, but we're going to leave this here for now. So until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff. It really helps the channel, and I'll see you all next time.